Garden Report is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report. Celtics beat the Hornets in the first of a back-to-back here. No Dalzell alongside, and the Grant Williams foul ends up taking precedence over what was actually a pretty entertaining game to that point. Call a flagrant 2. He gets ejected for hip checking Jason Tatum mid-court on a transition play. Tatum got flagrant fouled on the next play as well, and that pretty much put the game out of reach at that point. But hard nonsense foul by Grant there that's hard to come to grips with, and the Celtics had a hard time with it too after the game. Here's Grant's reaction to the play as well as some commentary on it by his ex-teammates.
JT's one of my closest friends in the league. It's no intentional trying to harm him in any way. So it was just one of those plays where fast, full speed, he passes the ball, which kind of probably makes it worse, is that like when I reached for the ball after the fact, the ball's already out of his hand. I don't think it leads to anything if it's not escalated after the fact. If you see me raise my hand and say like I fouled him, trying to take the foul in transition, and then got helped up by my teammates and walked away, I don't think anybody thought it was a malicious intent by any means, because you don't see anybody like running up to me, and to me is D. White, none of those guys. So JB was frustrated just because you don't want to hurt your teammate.
I don't know what that was about. I think that spoke for itself. I don't know if Grant missed JT or I don't know what that was, but it just wasn't a basketball play. Grant know better than that. Actions speak loud, so it is what it is. We got the win, we move on, but there's no place in the game for that. I thought JT and Grant was friends. I guess not. The action. I mean, everybody saw the same thing, right? Non-basketball player.
So I'm super interested to see what happens here tomorrow. The fallout. I know Grant told Caleb Barton that he's not expecting to have his teammates for dinner now. And there's obviously some heat coming out of this game. Flagrant text by both coaches. Flagrant by Grant just sent the Celtics as much as they can be into outrage over it.
Yeah, this was a wild game. I feel like the basketball part of it ended and it's almost an afterthought now, but it was a really fascinating back and forth game until the last few minutes just kind of dominated the storylines. And it's hard to not. I mean, it's a former teammate. It's a guy that we know Tatum is close friends with. And then that was just probably one of the more aggressive fouls you'll see in an NBA game. Let's say it doesn't get too crazy over here, as Joe Mazzulla has pointed out.
You don't see many flagrant twos.
You don't see many flagrant twos. And this was one of those where it was like, I don't think there wasn't much building up. Like sometimes you see a flagrant 2 where two guys are jawing at it all night and there's like a flagrant and, it starts to kind of accumulate. This was kind of random. I don't think the intent was to hurt or the intent was to send a message. I think it was just dumb, honestly. But that being said, it's the story now, and you could tell that Jalen was pissed about it post-game. Jalen was not holding back. Derek White wasn't happy about it. He called it BS right after the broadcast and kind of doubled down on it. So it was a rare situation where you have a former teammate and a guy that everybody's on good terms with, who literally this morning, Grant Williams was telling us that they're going to come over tonight after the game. And then obviously confirmed post-game that was no longer happening. And so, yeah, just a weird one. Really just perplexing. And I'm super glad this is a back-to-back, because we're going to see if this trickles into tomorrow at all. At least we're going to get to see them interact a little bit pre-game. So we'll have lots of coverage on all that.
Yeah, and it is pretty emblematic of Grant in that spot. 6 points, 4 fouls, sort of got taken out of the game effectively to that point. And as the Hornets started to fade in that game, it was 100-99. Joe picks up that tech at that point, and then they go on a good run after that. But the Hornets are still there, still a few plays away, and they went down by 15 in this game. I think they went down by double digits again after that. And every time they came back, and they still had enough time to claw back into this, especially the way their offense was rolling. And Grant, who wasn't a huge part of those efforts, ends up just making a desperation play where there didn't need to be one, to, I guess, try to insert himself in that moment. Again, he said he was making a play on the ball. Doesn't look like it in that moment. So I don't understand the explanation, and I don't understand what he was trying to do in that spot.
Yeah, and again, I don't think he's trying to hurt. I think it's just one of those out of control things that he does have a track record with at this point. So it's not like a completely isolated thing. Like this is, he has moments, and he had one against Jalen last time. I think maybe Gary Washburn or somebody brought that up post game, that this has happened before. And Yeah, I don't think it'll carry over. Like, I think they're going to be fine tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. But it's certainly, like, from the actual game standpoint, that sequence of plays and, like, the following flagrant foul and the technical on Charles Lee, like, that all happened in just a few minutes. And it went from being, like, maybe we're going to go down to the wire here till suddenly I looked up and I was like, oh, this is over. And it did end because of a couple of plays that kind of built up there. So, yeah, I'm curious what the takeaway is going to be for, we'll talk to Charles Lee tomorrow pregame. I'm curious what he'll have to say on kind of everything that went down. But yeah, certainly it's not what you're hoping for if you're the Hornets, because you don't want to lose your cool and kind of have these things kind of build up. But for Boston, I think everybody handled it well. Like, it seemed to kind of motivate them, and everybody's talked about how they don't mind when the game gets chippy. And I think Tatum did his marquee thing, which is storming off. Jalen did the thing that he always does. Everybody kind of played their role. This is a team that's played together for a long time. They all kind of know what they do in these moments.
So it did put everyone on the Celtics in an uncomfortable position. Joe, I feel like, held back a little bit about his commentary on it in terms of Grant. Like, didn't really go at Grant in that moment. Tatum didn't talk tonight, so I'm interested to hear once it comes around what his view on it is, because as you mentioned, he stayed pretty even keel in that moment of putting himself out of the play. Obviously looked frustrated, but went to the foul line and just moved on immediately. But it was a moment, obviously, Jalen felt that way, and maybe his teammates could have done a little bit more too in terms of going at Grant in that moment, but Jalen put it on himself. Derek obviously agreed with what Jalen did in that spot, and I thought for Derek's standards it was pretty upset in that moment. So we've talked about these moments before, and they're few and far between, but they are important in terms of how you react to an opponent going at you, trying to knock you off your game, as Jalen said it. And maybe Jalen's efforts alone in that moment are enough, but it does put the Celtics in an interesting spot, because you can't just not react to it. Maybe Tatum can, because he's just trying to get himself out of the play in that moment and stay locked in.
Yeah.
But everybody else needs to respond to something like that. And Brown did it. Maybe his response was enough, but he was the only one going at Grant in that moment.
Yeah, I think that it was more than enough. I mean, the point of, like, we handled it well doesn't mean that you need to start a brawl, right? Like,
well, Joe saying maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah, and Joe can say that, but at the end of the day, like, did the Hornets even score after that play? Like, the end result is that they won the game by a lot, that Jalen sent the message that he wanted to send. I think the message was consistent post-game, that everybody felt comfortable with the way that it was handled. We didn't hear from Tatum. I'm not surprised. He probably would have spoken if it wasn't for that. I feel like he was having a big night, maybe not. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, I think this desire to see players recoil more, it feels like maybe it would serve the media and the fans because it would put on a show, but I don't think it serves the team itself. I think they handled it the way that they do, and they do have a sense of, like, this is who Tatum is. Like, people can love it, they can hate it, but it's who he is at his core. He's always going to have that identity of, like, being cool, calm, and collected, and sometimes it bothers people, but I think that at the end of the day, it serves him more than it hurts him. So I like the way they handled it, and I think it's the way that Jalen is an enforcer. It's subtle. It's not like he's going to go up and fight someone, but there's an understanding that he's the one that you don't want to piss off, and he's going to kind of stand up for his teammates.
Well, he doesn't care. I think that's pretty clear, especially with the things he said afterward, which were awesome to listen to. And they're fortunate they have him, because it doesn't seem like anyone else is going to take on that role here in Boston, and he has multiple times over the last few years here. So it was more than enough, Joe Mazzulla said, and obviously on the scoreboard it was more than enough. Celtics react in a big way to that play, hit a bunch of free throws, Keita throws down a dunk, shuts the game down, and Celtics get out of Game 1 with a win after going through some tough stretches in this one. Hornets bothered them at different points in this game, as I felt they would. And Game 2, probably going to be another tough one as well. We'll be back here with coverage of it for CLNS Media, Celtics All Access, brought to you by Prize Picks. Go over there, use the code CLNS, play a $5 lineup, get $50 bonus. And game time, if you want to come back here tomorrow, see what's going to happen between these two teams, go over there, use code CLNS, get $20 off your first ticket purchase over there. Terms apply. For Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning. Grant Williams ejected for a hard hit on Tatum in the Celtics win tonight.